Good evening and welcome to this evening's Audit Committee. May I approve the record of the meeting held on the 24th of June, please? Do we have any apologies for action? Sorry, for absence, not for actions. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. I'm subbing for Councillor Nestros.
Thank you very much for that. Has anybody got any urgent matters by reason of special circumstances? I don't have any and I haven't been notified of any, so that we have no urgent matters. Do any members have disclosable pecuniary interest or other significant interests in this agenda? We have none of those. Now we're on to item 5, which is the Treasury Management Report 26-27, Quarter 1, and I'll ask Andy if he would introduce this for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Treasury Management Report covering the period up to 30th of June 2026. The report is actually split into specific sections which will assist members to understand the Treasury function and its performance during the first 3 months of this financial year. The backdrop of the economic context, or to help with the economic context, is provided at section 4 on page 14, and that's been provided by our Treasury advisors, Arlene Close. So a few snippets within the report that is worth pointing out. The level of external borrowing has reduced by 26 million in the first quarter, whilst investments have increased by just over 7 million. The long-term investments have reduced mainly due to the partial redemption following the Council's decision to withdraw from the former Patrizia Hanover Property Fund. The overall Treasury Management Summary is shown at Table 2, or at top of page 17, whilst further details relating to the composition of the external borrowing are shown at Table 3A on page 18, and investments at Table 3B on page 21. I mentioned the property funds, but we also have details of non-treasury investments detailed in paragraph 5.8. That mainly deals with capital loans to the Council's subsidiaries. With regard to Treasury performance, that being the interest and financing forecast net spend against budget as per round 1 monitoring, that's detailed at paragraph 5.9 on page 21, showing a projected pressure of just over 4.16 million due to a potential overspend of 4.89 million on the interest paid, offset by projected underspends in interest earned, that's 437k, and MRP 240k. And also paragraph 5.10 on page 21 shows our compliance with Treasury limits, and there are no breaches of the limits set in the Treasury strategy during the period. I'm happy to take any questions from members. Thank you.
Councillor Lawrence.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for the report. I think the obvious question is around the overspend or pressure on debt interest. So I'm just wondering, that's the position at the first quarter. What's the projected position for the year? Because if I understand it right, Andy, we always have a dip in external borrowing at the first quarter, and then it rises through the year as, you know, other funding mechanisms fall by the wayside, and obviously you get capital programs that progress over that time. So any comments on where you think we're going to end up at the end of the financial year? Because obviously the general fund is under enormous pressure, and this was a problem last year, and it now seems to be a problem again this year. So that would be good. And more of a general point, we had a problem with the budgeting of debt interest for last year, and we've seemed to have opened this year with a problem for budgeting for debt interest. And I'm wondering whether we're being badly advised on interest rates, because everyone's looking for a really positive number, not the fact that interest rates are up and down a little bit at the moment, or you guys are doing your job and the administration is pushing back saying, can we not be a little bit more optimistic so we can spend money in other areas? So that's my main question on this section. And then I've just got just a general question more for Phil, just around as we now move into this period running up to LGR, Phil, you know, what have you got any early intelligence on what the debt profiles are going to look like for the three authorities? And at the end of the day, Dartford and Gratian are much, much smaller. I think actually someone told me that Dartford's total general fund spend is less than our debt interest payments. But obviously we've got to aggregate or disaggregate the Kent debt profile. Is there any information on what that's looking like at the moment? Thank you, Chair.
If I answer the bit about the monitoring, and I think I may defer to Phil for the much wider picture on how things are going. But so we review the interest and financing forecast regularly. We're doing that monthly. That's a forecast for the year, and it's based on. We'll look at the borrowing we have, which we know where that's locked in. And if we were to not have to refinance, if we were to do no more borrowing, as we are now, we would probably just come slightly under budget. But that would be taking no more loans out, and we've got about £150 million worth of loans that will mature throughout 26, 27. So we have estimated what we think is the likely amount of those that we're going to have to refinance. We've then tried to factor in what we think other things that will play into that, like capital spend, and that's based on the round one forecast, obviously with borrowing, and looking at our revenue projected outturn at the moment, what we think our call on EFS, so therefore capital borrowing, may be, assuming there were no other management actions. And I think that's something will be looked at. So we'll keep reviewing that throughout the year. We've also got interest forecasts from our Treasury advisors. So when we're looking and saying in each quarter we would likely have to refinance this amount of loans, we've already got an idea of what the likely interest rates will be facing. Based on the last interest rate forecast they provided, and things do change quite regularly, there's not going to be an awful lot of change in interest rates throughout the year. At the time we had it, which was in late June, I believe they were looking at something like a 0.15% reduction throughout the year, but very small amounts. So we're always looking, when we do have to borrow, we're always looking to see if what's the most competitive. Is it PWLB? Or is it the fact that LAs may work for us? But of course, with that, that's much shorter term, and we're obviously trying to look and say, how can we extend our maturity profile so that we don't constantly have to renew things, but we've got to obviously weigh up what the best option is. So I suppose what I'm saying is that we are reviewing this every month. We'll continue doing that. At the moment, the best estimate we have is that round one forecast. But we'll keep looking at that and see if there's any other management actions that may help to reduce that forecast. And I'm sure Phil will have his views on that, as well as you mentioned about an overall debt profile in LGR.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, in terms of the budgeting, we'd flagged this at around the time we set the budget, that the assumptions that underpinned it. If you go back a year, we were expecting interest rates to come down, and they didn't. For the 26-27 budget, and this is based on our advisors' advice, we assume that interest rates would largely flatline, but they actually went up, and so we keep getting caught out by this. So the budget was set at a point in time. That's what was agreed in February. The interest rates are still higher than we anticipated they would be. So, you know, Andy's explained that. In terms of the wider how we're going to manage it, I can't, the programme is agreed. It is what it is. There's no appetite to stop schemes that are in train at the moment. So our projections remain as they are. So the mitigation is within the department. So, and I don't want to drift into the cabinet report that's going to be considered on Tuesday. I know it's in the public domain and therefore tempting to discuss it. But BSD has identified, the Business Support Department has identified management action to cover it off. So as a, yeah, and it'll be through management of vacancies and looking at non-essential spend and all of that kind of stuff to try and cover it. What we've got to try and do now is build a more robust set of assumptions for the 27-28 budget. Do you want me to cover off the second question? Yeah. Yeah. So the overall debt for the North Kent Authority. I don't think I'm stating anything that isn't patently obvious when I say I suspect we are going to need exceptional financial support to be increased this financial year. You've seen the report. Now that's going to increase our EFS to well, it's getting there or thereabouts, isn't it? We've got we're sort of reporting 700 million at the moment with the capital programme. You know, you're looking at probably 800 or 900 million by the time LGR happens for Medway. On top of that, there will be an element of Kent debt that will be disaggregated to those elements of the new North Kent that are currently in Kent. And my understanding is that Dartford and Gravesham, broadly between them, majority of it is Gravesham, is about another 200 mil of debt for those two districts as well. So, yeah, that's the kind of level of debt that the new North Kent Authority is going to be carrying.
Thank you, Phil. I mean, obviously those numbers will develop over time, and I think it's very interesting. I think my only other concern is the constant capitalisation of revenue spend. You know, the £7 million to sort out LGR, for example. At the last meeting, we discussed the capital receipts, and 7 million of it had been hived off for a more capitalised spend. So where we are disposing of assets, we're not really for me, well, I'd be getting rid of all my expensive short-term debt rather than keep spending it on other stuff. And I think there's a real problem. I just wonder, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in your group meetings when you're discussing these debt problems, because I just wonder what you're actually talking about. Thank you.
Right. Yeah, sorry. So, I've lost my train of thought. What were we talking about again? Capitalisation, yeah. Right. So, at the moment, we have committed some capital receipts, quite a lot of capital receipts, and make no bones about it, to deliver some transformation, and also the 7 million that you alluded to fund LGR preparations. Now we've been, as a county system, had been making representations to the MHLG about how LGR is going to be paid for, because the assumptions that our strategic partner came up with suggested it would cost in excess of £100 million to deliver LGR. And we were struggling to get an answer, but I think my peers around the table have at various forums pushed Nico Heslop, who's the director of finance at MHLG, and he's basically said, he started off by saying capital receipts are across the system, you're not going to generate that quantum of capital receipts to fund it. And then it's kind of, well, if you haven't got the capital receipts, it's exceptional financial support. So borrowing. There is no money apart from, I think it's about 900,000 per new unitary, which will fund elections and some of the initial kind of setup stuff, but it's nowhere near enough to cover the actual cost or the estimated cost of delivering LGR. So we, the administration, the management team, felt that we had to put some resource in because we just did not have the capacity in the organisation to deliver all the work that we need to do in preparation for LGR. And that's why that 7 million was put in there over the 18-month period. Feel like we have no choice. Otherwise, if you try and get people to do it as part of their day job, the day job doesn't get done. So that's part of it. Now, going back to your point about, you know, we're using that money rather than using it to pay off the debt. I've now had this conversation with the administration. We're putting a pause on any more investment from that over and above what we've committed. The projections are that we will generate 50 odd million pound worth of capital receipts over the next, you know, including last year's and the next couple of years. And I think we're all agreed that that will go to pay off the EFS.
Yeah, I think, okay, that would strike me as an absolutely sensible move. I have got one suggestion about maybe dealing with this, is maybe we need a Medway in the North office, because then we can deal with Angela Rayner as the new head of MHCLG, and we'd be closer to the decision makers. Thank you, Chair.
Anybody else? Sorry, Mr. Chatham.
Thank you, Chair. The Treasury report contains a couple of drafting error on page 18, paragraph 5.6.8. The word is mainly, and the second line, it's volatility, which could be corrected before publication. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Hackwell, are you next?
Yeah, thank you, Andy, for your report. Just a couple of things for me. With the 40 million in LOBO loans maturing in the next 12 months, how confident are we that we will get them at the same rate, or will it be a higher rate, and have we accounted for that? You know, I know it's crystal ball gazing, but you know, what have we done to mitigate if that is the case? And you know, the table on page 16, which basically says the balance sheet summary, we look at the borrowing we had at the end of March 25, which is only March last year, and we've gone up by, I don't know, 200 and something of million, 230 million of borrowing over the last 18 months. What is the main cause for that borrowing? And because we just can't seem to finance it. And the final one really for me is how confident are we on this new advisor? What's your first impressions of the new advisor? I understand we changed from the last advisor because they just kept getting it wrong. And how has the new advisor's performance been so far? I'd just like to get a feel of what you think about that.
Thank you, Councillor Hackwell. So, with regards to the debt, so there was an increase during 25-26 of around 130 million. That was the reason for that. I think we've mentioned that. It would have been capital spend. It would have been lending to our subsidiaries, although we get a net benefit from that because we get the investment income from that, and also our EFS. So all of those things put together, we had quite a substantial capital spend last year. The total capital spend was not far short of 100 million overall last year. It was a lot of spend on some very big ticket items, which obviously have been approved in the programme. So I think that continues. You'll be aware that there are further big ticket items that are in there at the moment that will continue to spend, and obviously they will have gone forward to be approved as part of the budget. But with that, we'll factor in what we think needs to, when we need to finance those. But all of those things continue, along with our assistance to our subsidiaries to enable them to produce what they are producing, which is a benefit to the area. So we're all of those things, and Phil has obviously mentioned EFS. All of those things mean that we are predicting that borrowing will increase along those lines. But we'll obviously review that, and we will only borrow when we absolutely need to. So I think we are trying to look into our balance sheet health. That's something Phil really wants to look at and get behind, and that's been mentioned before. So that's something that we are actively looking into to see what we can do there, and we're engaging with our Treasury advisors on that. So our Treasury advisors, we changed at the beginning of March this year. I can only say from my opinion, I'm very impressed with Arlene Close. There are two main players in the market, Arlene Close and MUFG. The split within the authorities in Kent is roughly 50-50, and they both provide fairly similar services. But what I will say is I feel from the meetings I've had and the information I've had from Arlene Close, they are very proactive, and they certainly want to help us to move forward on things. I would also say it's on a personal level, it's sometimes a benefit to engage with somebody new who has brings different approaches to the table, but they are a professional company that provides that level of detail and information that we need, exactly as MUFG will have done. But I say, so far, really pleased with that. Have I answered everything? Just the Lobo. On Lobos, so whilst there potentially could be call-ins of a lot of this, I think that is highly unlikely. I think that there could be, say, a quarter of that. There could be 10 million. I think the interest rates on the remaining Lobos are not as low as the ones that have either finished or had been replaced. So it's the lender options are going to be there if they feel they're not getting the deal that they want out of it, and obviously then they'll exercise their right. But I think at the moment I've not heard that there's going to be much of a call on that, so I think they probably will remain for now.
Just me then. I want to go back to the new Treasury advisors. Way back when I was very new to the council, we had presentations from our Treasury advisors, and we've had them since. I'm wondering whether this committee is going to have something like that from our new Treasury advisors, because I'm very heartened to hear that the professional working relationship is good, but I think members would be comforted if we had, I mean, it doesn't have to be in person, it could be online. Yeah. So I don't know where to put this out to, but if the committee is minded to, perhaps we could ask officers if it would be possible to arrange something for the committee, please.
Yes, Chair. Myself, Phil and Abby are meeting with them in the next couple of weeks, we'll certainly raise that and we'll speak with Steve to get something organised, if that's okay. We'll get that sorted out for you.
Thank you, everybody. Yes,
I
of
suggest,
course.
so just a suggestion, because sometimes getting the committee dates and getting people's diaries, this doesn't really need to be a committee item. I think it should just be like a meeting, or an extra, not a meeting of the committee, a meeting for committee members to attend, because it might be easier to get diaries sorted. Otherwise, that could be a bit of an issue.
Yeah, I'd endorse that actually, because not that we ever have significant take up, but I tend to, in the past, have opened those sessions up to all members. I think it's important all members understand how our treasury, finances work. Like I say, we don't often have many more than the audit committee turn up, but I think we can certainly do that and open it up again.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting it had to be. So can I call upon the vice chair to?
I move the recommendation at page 13. The committee is asked to note the Treasury Management Report 2026-27 Quarter 1. Additionally, the Treasury advisors, it's going to be looked into, Treasury advisors giving a presentation or briefing to members.
Thanks very much, Andy. We now come on to the internal audit strategy for 25-28, the progress update. And I call upon James, the head of internal audit and counter fraud, to introduce the report for us. Quick.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the report before members provides the first annual update on progress against the internal audit strategy 2025-28, which was approved by the committee in March 2025. The strategy was developed to meet the requirements of the global internal audit standards and sets out the vision and strategic direction for the internal audit function over a 3-year period. Now, the update demonstrates positive progress against all 3 strategic themes. Over the last year, we've continued to strengthen the alignment between our work plans and the Council's strategic objectives and risks, improved workforce capacity and resilience following the staffing challenges experienced during 2024-25, and increased our engagement with senior management and other stakeholders to enhance the impact of our work. Members will see from the detailed appendix that a number of objectives have already seen significant progress, including the embedding of the internal audit career progression framework, improvements in audit plan delivery, increased use of technology to support audit activity, and further progress towards full conformance with the global internal audit standards. There are also a small number of areas, such as assurance mapping, where progress has been slower than anticipated due to competing priorities, but these remain part of our planned programme of development. Overall, I feel that we have made good progress during the first year of the strategy, particularly given the focus that has been required on rebuilding the team's capacity and addressing the legacy workload pressures. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Start with Councillor Lawrence.
Chair, I promise you I'm keeping my questions short and I'm not asking all of them either. I've just got two very small points. Just noting the pressure on senior leaders in the audit team is slowing up reports. We're getting the work done, but maybe you can't do the assurance, get the report out. I'm just wondering how we're going to deal with that. And just on the assurance mapping exercise, is there a new timeline for completing that work? Because obviously that's a key piece of work for this year. Thank you, Chair. See?
Thank you, Councillor Lawrence. Thanks, James.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yes, thank you. So yes, there is a bit of a bottleneck. Part of that was made worse by the fact that we had new starters and things like that. Obviously, you're trying to deal with new people, so the manager was constantly being pulled away. Obviously, when we had staffing issues as well the previous year, with people being off, long-term sick, and things like that, that again took the audit manager away from that time where she's performing the quality assurance role. We're getting there with clearing that backlog. I've made some time to help with that as well. That's why when we get on to the next item, you'll see there's the second level of the secondary quality assurance checks are very low, but that's because I've been doing a lot of the primary assurance, quality assurance work to try and help clear that backlog. We know going forward it's something we're going to have to think about. Obviously, when we get into the new North Kent structure, we want to address those sorts of things as part of that. So we are going to be looking at it moving forward. But at the moment, the key area is trying to clear that backlog, and we're getting there. We're almost there. In terms of the assurance mapping exercise, both myself and the internal audit manager, there's various ways we could do this and how it could look and everything else. We're both going on training with the Institute of Internal Auditors to see how they would do it, because then obviously that should then be in compliance with the standards and how it's expected to be. So we're hoping to get on that training in September, and then we can start the work on that from there.
I'm just wondering, in regards to the assurance mapping work, would it not be possibly better, but I know this could be quite expensive, is to get someone in to do that exercise and then hand it over to you? So therefore it gets done because you're paying someone who's not going to be distracted by all the other rubbish that hits your desk. And that, you know, there could be that sort of, that person can then hand over, you've had the training and you can then just get on with monitoring it and managing it.
That's certainly something we can look into. I think the issue there is we already know the people in the organisation. So are we able to get, because we're looking at the 3 lines of defence. So we're looking at what's the assurance provided by managers, then the quality assurance, etc., that follows. So it may be that potentially it's quicker for us. I don't know, but we can certainly say we can look into and see what I think the other thing is as well. We need to know what the costs might be, because if it's astronomical, then it's probably better for us to do it ourselves.
Councillor Hackwell, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Jack. Just a little thing. Can you just expand a little bit of what the independent validation of the FIT plan consisted of? Because obviously the FIT plan is probably the cornerstone of the finances for this administration. They have a plan to reduce their expenditure by 50 million, apparently. So I just wonder what sort of independent validation you did, and did you concur with the information in the FIT plan?
Yeah, so we're responsible for providing independent validation and assurance over non-financial actions. So obviously we're not accountants, we don't look at the numbers. So it's the key actions that people are undertaking as part of that process. So when the management team have provided with a quarterly report that then comes through to scrutiny committees and things like that. So when managers come forward to say that an action is complete, we will look at we will ask for the evidence and independently validate that yes, that has been taken through. So we will ask to see the evidence. Obviously, what then goes to corporate management team is the overall, these are the results. So what we're doing is delving into the evidence to make sure that that is actually done. So we're just providing that independent check on it.
No one actually looks to see whether they actually delivered what they said they were going to deliver. You know, if you're going to say I'm going to reduce, I don't know, paper usage by 20% or whatever the plan is, you validate, but no one looks at the numbers, is it?
Finance look at the numbers, we don't. We're providing the independent check that they've actually carried out. If I take adult social care, for an example, I know one of the things was they had a target of to review X amount of care packages. So when they say they've achieved that target, we will look at, right, okay, where's the evidence to support that you have done that? The finance part of it that follows is what the finance teams then check.
Thanks, James, for the clarification. I think we all benefited from that. Anybody else? If I could call on Vice Chair, please.
I move the recommendation at page 23. The committee is recommended to note the progress during 2025-26 against the internal audit strategy 2025 to 28.
Seconded.
That agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. We now move on to item 7, the Internal Audit Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme performance for 25-26. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this report is again the first annual update of performance, but this is against the Internal Audit Quality Assurance and Improvement Programme, or QAIP for short, and this was also approved by the committee in March 2025. As part of our response to the global internal audit standards. So the QAIP was designed to provide a structured framework for monitoring the quality, effectiveness and continuous improvement of the internal audit function. Members may recall that when the QAIP was approved, the performance measures included within it were intended to focus on the broader development of the internal audit function rather than our day-to-day operational performance, which is reported separately through our audit plans and update reports. Now, this report is therefore intended to demonstrate how the service has developed over the last 12 months as part of the drive for that continuous improvement. Now, overall, the results detailed in Appendix 1 are encouraging. The service has seen improvements in a number of key areas, including conformance with the global internal audit standards increasing from 88 to 94%, increases in the number of staff holding professional qualifications or studying, and a substantial reduction in staff turnover, and obviously there's improved stakeholder satisfaction. Members will also note improvements in timelines of key stages within the audit process and reductions in the average time and cost required to complete assurance engagements, reflecting the progress made in rebuilding capacity following those challenges experienced during 2024-25. The report also proposes some amendments to performance indicators 7 to 10. While the original measures reported the percentage of audits completed within target timescales, experience has shown that these figures can be distorted by the overall volume of audits completed. Now, the proposed revisions would instead report the average time taken to complete the key stages of the audit process, which we believe provides a clearer and more meaningful measure of performance. Now, with some reviews from 25-26 are still to be finalised, the reported outturns for measures 8 to 10 may still fluctuate slightly. So when we present the QAIP next year, we will include the final outturns along with those from 24-25 to show year-on-year trends. Members may recall that our first self-assessment against the standards was undertaken in 2025, shortly after the new standards came into effect. Now, that assessment identified 14 actions designed to either to address areas of non-conformance or strengthen the supporting evidence available to demonstrate that conformance. Now, Appendix 2 provides an update on progress against those actions. I'm pleased to report that 11 of the 14 actions have now been completed, resulting in an improvement of general conformance from 46 standards last year to 49 standards in 2026, with only 3 areas currently remaining partially conformant. Now, the outstanding actions are primarily linked to the assurance mapping that we've already discussed, committee training materials and the implementation of our assurance engagement management system. Now, progress in these areas has been slower than originally anticipated due to competing priorities, including addressing those legacy work backlogs and supporting new staff, and also the requirement for me to undertake some work associated with the Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act and the new Failure to Prevent Fraud offence. However, work remains ongoing and plans are in place to complete the remaining actions. Our annual review has also identified 2 new actions arising to ensure continued alignment with evolving professional requirements, including the management of topical requirements introduced by the Institute of Internal Auditors. Now, obviously, these weren't in place when we did our last review. We will continue to report on progress against these new actions as well as those outstanding, but I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you, James. Just a quick one, really. I look at Q14 and it says average cost per assignment engagement, and The baseline was 8,200. It's now 7,678 or whatever it is. Yet the overall cost of the audit function has gone up by, I don't know, probably £40,000. So it's costing us less to do an audit, but it's gone up. So how do you rationalise that? Are we doing lots more or?
Right. So the average cost, the reason the overall cost has gone up is obviously increases in staffing costs. So as a whole, those costs have gone up. However, the average cost for the review has come down slightly because we are doing the review. We're improving how quickly we do those reviews. Now, at the moment, obviously, we've got an awful lot of people. We've got 4 people on apprenticeships. So we haven't done, although we've done some of the reviews quicker, we haven't been able to carry out more because we've got people still learning. As those people progress through their qualification, through that apprenticeship, because that in itself has a requirement for 20% off the job learning. So we've got to give them time to do those things as well. As those people progress through that apprenticeship and they qualify, and we're no longer having to spend that 20% off the job, what you'll see is we'll be in a position to carry out more reviews alongside that enhanced, reducing the amount of time each one takes. So at the moment, that's why you're seeing that sort of disconnect. Our costs are going up, but the average is coming down. Over time, that will start to balance out a little bit.
Councillor Lawrence.
Just both the comments really. QAIP 18, it's disappointing to see the number of responses to your survey went down. I think I did complete it this year. I certainly did complete something from internal audit. So, I mean, do we need to be giving... I do hope all the senior leaders in the organisation actually did complete that survey. Otherwise, someone should be banging the table at CMT. The only other number that's missing from this report, the indicators report, you've got QAIP 1 to 18, is the number of days lost sick. You've got every other sort of HR thing there, like training, on-the-job training, all of that, but the number of days, because I know that can be a real problem. Phil's had lots of issues with sickness, and it's just how many days have been lost. Yeah, so I just wonder if it's deliberate not to report that, or it's just not required to report it. But I do think it would be an important number, because leading on from Councillor Hackwell's comment, obviously if you're losing people because they're off X number of days to sick, it means you're not completing audits, or some audits are started and can't be completed. So I think that number would be quite useful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a deliberate omission. It's just we don't see that sickness is a measure of our continuing improvement. Obviously, we can't control. I mean, this is in the fraud team, but I'm going to lose someone for several weeks because of planned surgery. But that's not necessarily a measure of how we as a service are improving. We've got turnover in there because obviously the impact of people leaving is far greater. We do report days lost in our resource when we do our update report. So although it's not in these measures, we do provide that information to the committee, because obviously we have a projection at the start of the year what resource we think is going to be available. If there are any losses in that resource, we do report it as part of those updates. So you are receiving that information, but as a measure of our continuing improvement, I'm not sure it is one.
And just as an example, if obviously you got a lot of baseline data here, so obviously if you in 1 year you lost 60 days through staff sickness, and in the current year you've only lost 10 days, that's an improvement, isn't it?
Yeah, as I say, there was no conscious decision not to include it, but we've had a few instances of people being off for surgery and things like that, which skews the figures. So I'm not sure it really demonstrates what we're looking for with this particular document. But as I say, we do report when we lose time in our update reports.
Councillor Bowen.
Following on from Councillor Lawrence's comments about the sick, would you not sort of try and plan in for, you know, a certain amount of sick leave being taken? I know it's difficult to predict, but would there be some attempt?
You'd have some in it.
Yeah, as part of when I'm drawing up the plans, the audit work plans at the start of the year, there's a whole process I go through. So it will calculate the amount of working days for each individual officer. We then take off annual leave, we take off time for training, sickness. We put an average of 6 days for every officer. And that's what then leaves us with our projection of resource for the year. So it, as I say, it takes off the time for training, it takes off the time that officers are required for those on apprenticeship, for the off-the-job learning. We'll build time in for team meetings, other things, things that they have to do as council employees that aren't audit related. We build in like administration time, things like that. All of that is built in. So when we come to the committee and say, right, our plan has been drawn up based upon, we think we're going to have a resource of 600 days this year. That's the net. That 600 days is the net resource after we take off all of those allowances. So we do build in time for sickness, yes.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Right, it's down to me then. A couple of questions, James. Firstly, I'm very happy to see that the number of days spent on CPE and non-professional qualification training and learning is more than trebled. So that hopefully will stand us in good stead, because you did say that we are reducing the amount of churn in the service currently. The other thing I wanted to ask a little bit about, because it does sort of lead on from Councillor Hackwell's question about the costs and stuff. The number of days we spent on advisory services, are they external to the internal audit function and the fraud function? Like, are they over and above that? And do you get paid for it? I don't mean you personally, but does the service get paid for them?
Yeah, so the advisory services, so we either go to a service and we will carry out an assurance review. The other side to that is we can go in what we used to refer to as a consultancy basis or an advisory capacity. So if a service is about to make significant changes to their processes, introduce something completely new, our advisory role in that instance is we would go in and, rather than assessing whether their governance is in place and has been working, what we're doing is helping them establish what does the appropriate governance and risk management need to be. So it's providing that advice so that things are set up from the start, rather than they go off and do their thing. 6 months later, we go in and go, shouldn't have done that kind of thing. So that's what the advisory services are.
I'm glad that that's a sort of safety net for us on that. My other question goes back to the famous LGR question. Are the other audit functions that we should be joining when we join with the LGR that's going to happen, are they at sort of the same speed as you with their development against these standards, or are you leading the way, or are you advising them as well? Because obviously we want it to work from day one. Thank you.
Yeah, so there's currently, we are one of 5 partnerships in the county, so there's only 5 audit teams, if you like, covering the 14 authorities. I meet with the other heads of audit on a quarterly basis, so we have what's called the Kent Audit Group. So we're in discussions about things that we've been in discussion throughout, and when it comes to LG for the announcements this month, so we knew which existing districts, etc., were going to be paired with who. What we'll be doing as we move forward, so when we're planning for 27, 28, we will be having conversations across those boundaries to say, right, what areas do we all need to look at, and aligning our work plan so that we are providing those organisations with assurance in the appropriate areas pre-vesting day. The other side to that is obviously even post-vesting day, it's still going to take time for things to harmonise. So if we're looking at payroll, for example, there's probably going to be 3 or 4 different payroll approaches and systems and things like that. So if we can do some work to provide assurance running up to it, it will hopefully make our life a little bit easier after vesting day. and then we'll be in a stronger position to help with that harmonisation. Because if there's 3 different ways of doing things, if we provide that assurance over the 3 different types on the run-up to LGR, in theory, what can then happen is that whatever the single process becomes, they can pick the best parts out of the 3, for example. So we are having those conversations now. In terms of, are they at the same level as us? Yes, I think everyone has been making good progress with implementing the standards. KCC are the only authority that have had an external quality assessment since the new standards came in. Our one isn't due until January, February 2028, because we had our last one in February 2023. We have to have it every 5 years. They've got a very good outcome from that, and they've been highlighted as having some areas of best practice as well, which, considering the standards only came in last year, that's good. So again, we've had those discussions. If there are things we can learn that maybe we can implement, I do have those discussions with the head of audit at KCC. So yes, we're all in conversation about things that are going to be needed for the future.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Just, you mentioned that the next audit will be in like March or February, March time of 28, when we'll only have 4 weeks of the organisation left to run. Would it not be prudent to have it early? I know there might be a requirement to have it every 5 years, but probably it would be better to have it in 27. At least we'd get some assurance rather than wait to 1 month of the organisation to run. I think it's a bit pointless having it in March 28, basically.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. We've been having conversations about that. The debate is: are we better to? Is it better to have it slightly early, or do we have it late? As in, do we have the service assessed once the new service is in place? Because again, if we have that external quality assessment early, the service as is no longer going to exist. So it may be better that we delay slightly, and once the new service is in and harmonised, that's when we have our because when vesting day hits, we'll be bringing together my existing team across Dartford and Gravesham. We'll be bringing in people from Dartford. We'll be bringing in potentially people from KCC. They're all going to have been working different ways because each authority's got its approach. Some people have got computer systems to manage their audits, some haven't. So I personally think we might be better just delaying and having it once we're in and harmonised, and then the service as is being fully assessed.
Thank you. Thanks, James. Any more questions? Can I ask the Vice Chair, please?
I move the recommendation at page 33. The committee has recommended to note the progress against the QAIP and GIAS action plan, and the committee has recommended to approve the revisions to performance indicators QAIP 7 to QAIP 10 inclusive as per table 2 in appendix 1.
Great, thank you. We now move on to the National Fraud Initiatives Exercise Annual Update. And I'll ask James to introduce that for us as well, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so members last received an update on the NFI exercises in July 2025, detailing the progress with the 2023-24 and 24-25 exercises, with the 2023-24 exercise having been completed. Since the last update, there's been significant progress with the 24-25 exercise, with activity almost concluded in relation to all reports. A handful of matches relating to benefits remain as they were added at a later date, and one other match remains open while we deal with an ongoing criminal investigation. We've commenced work on the 25-26 council tax exercise, although at the time of reporting it was still in the early stages, with matches having been assessed and review letters issued, but only a handful of matches had reached their conclusion. This will obviously increase steadily as we start to get responses to those reviews. The financial savings noted in the financial implications show the results from the 2 exercises to date, and members will note that this totals almost 900,000, although a proportion is made up of notional savings. These are not wholly in addition to savings detailed in counter-fraud updates. Any activity dealt with by counter-fraud is recorded as part of our update reports and includes cases that may have been generated as a result of the NFI data matching. That's all I was going to say by way of introduction. I'm happy to take any questions members may have.
Councillor Hackwell.
Thank you for the report. Just as more of an open question, you look at the council tax number of batches and you're talking thousands and you end up with a handful basically that get actioned. What effort goes into discounting those 3,000? I mean, how long does it take to discount, or is it just a computer match or something, or are we wasting a lot of time and effort going through thousands of records just to end up with a handful? Just get a feel for that, if I may.
Yeah, so the main report, which matches single person discount to electoral roll, we do tend to check them all. But the check-in process is basically we're looking at the council tax records, because obviously the electoral roll is based on the canvass, which is at a point in time. So the first thing to do is check the council tax account. Has there been any change? Is the single person discount still in place? Has anyone moved? Because obviously with that slight time lag, we do get people that move house. So those initial checks, I don't know how much time it takes off the top of my head. We do record the amount of days we put towards NFI, and that is the check-in process. If it moves on to an actual investigation, that's recorded in our reactive investigation time. So yeah, when it comes to other reports such as the HMRC, the matches to HMRC data, again, we don't know the age of the HMRC data. So those we do sample checks first. So if there's several thousand matches, we'll probably take 100 or 200 or something. If we don't get much out of that, we say, right, well, we're not going to check the rest. So each report is done slightly differently. The main report where we know we're going to get results, we do tend to go through them all. The reports against other council data sets and HMRC, we tend to do sample checks in the first instance, and if we get nothing out of those, we don't go any further. So, because obviously we're trying to prioritise our time. There would be no point in going through 10,000 matches if we were only going to get sort of 0.1% out of it. So,
Councillor Lawrence.
Just as a follow-up to Councillor Hackwell's question, this strikes me as a job for AI to actually bring all these different data sources that the council have access to into one place and then run some AI program over it. Because individual members of your team, you know, if you had to come to work and think I'm going to spend the next week manually checking through, I'd go sick to let someone else do it. But I do think this is an exact use case for AI. And my question, so just my follow-up question to Phil, in terms of Medway 2.0, which is supposed to be aggregating all of this data into readily available data sets, the 25 data sources we've got, where is that project? Because I think that's another
Data lake.
The data lake, another fail that would actually, I think you'd get more results if we had a process for dealing with this.
to pick up on your first point, I don't disagree. AI could save a lot of time. But what we've got to consider as well is the fact that there's an awful lot of personal data involved in this, and we have to be very careful about it. The other side to this isn't us doing our own matching. We are mandated, it's mandated, we have to provide this information, these data sets to the Cabinet Office who run the NFI. They then provide us with the matches. Whether we can do any use of AI with that, what comes back to check, I don't know. When the data lake's up and running, potentially that might be a more efficient way of dealing with it. But we've got to bear in mind the GDPR implications as well.
I totally accept that. But you put guardrails in place for all this type of stuff. So, but for me, I think this is low-hanging fruit. Genuinely, I mean, in my business, I process 8 million records in seconds through an AI program to look for matches. That, you know, I think this is definitely the way we need to be going. So I think there's more fraud than you're able to manually identify. And if you're only sampling 200, the danger for you is you sampled the wrong 200. That's the big problem. But I don't underestimate, and I'm not criticising the effort. I just think there's a better way of doing it. Thank you.
I call on Phil.
Yeah, thank you. I don't disagree with you, Councillor Lawrence. Paul is on leave at the moment, but over the last couple of weeks, while we've been in this intensive effort to look at opportunities for savings, I've had 2 or 3 CMT colleagues say to me, we could do something with AI, but we need the resource. So I need a conversation with Paul about the list. I've started almost making a list of all the different projects where people have said to me, is there an AI solution? And I need to sit down with Paul, prioritise it, and if I need to resource it, that's what I'll do.
I think it could be self-funding, Phil. Genuinely.
Okay, anybody else? Can I ask the Vice Chair, please?
I move the recommendation at page 43. The committee has recommended to note the report.
Is that agreed? Thank you very much. Now we move on to the Audit Committee terms of reference on page 51. James, can you introduce those first as well, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we are required to carry out a regular review of the committee's terms of reference, and the latest review is detailed in this report. Now, as noted in the report, there are some proposed amendments to sections on membership, external audit and internal control, risk management, internal audit and counter fraud. These amendments, which are shown as track changes for ease, are proposed to ensure that the terms of reference continues to reflect current professional standards, good practice and the evolving governance, audit and assurance landscape. I wasn't going to say anything further by way of introduction. Obviously, everything's outlined in the report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councillor Hackwell.
I haven't got a problem with most of the suggestions. I just would like to explore why we've gone from 25,000 to 100,000 in sort of like as a target or a cut-off. It seems an awful large raise. I mean, this wasn't updated very long ago, and to do it 4 times the amount seems quite significant. And
Nothing.
why would we not want to investigate things over more 25,000? That's just the question. What's the rationale behind it, really?
Essentially, it's about materiality. Now, when doing this, I did mean to change the figure last year. I didn't mean to put it in as 25,000. That element, we knew bringing red opinions to this committee was necessary. We'd been doing it at Gravesham for a short while, and I kind of took the same principle from there. I meant to update the figures because materiality at a district level is very different to at a unitary level. Having had discussions with both Phil and the monitoring officer, we felt that 25,000, given the Medway's budget, it's 25,000 is way too low. So we were proposing we kind of had that discussion about what was more sensible. I mean, materiality for external auditors is, I'm not even sure it's in the millions, potentially. So that was the reason for that change. It should have been that figure last year, basically.
Councillor Lawrence.
Yeah, I think we had a discussion at audit last time about the main audit and that. But I just wonder, when you're carrying out internal audit work on a school, 25,000 is material. So can I make a suggestion that we think, I'm happy to agree with the terms of reference, but we maybe band it based on what we're auditing? Because, I know at school level, it'll be Amazon, someone's using the school credit card to buy Amazon goods. You're never going to get to 100 grand in a school situation. And there could be also other places where there is a direct reporting into the council, might be small CICs, for example, where we might want to be doing some internal audit work, or where we've given grant funding, but low levels of grant funding, £5,000-10,000, we might want to do an internal audit. But if we've got this 100,000, I think that's too high for certain types of organisations that this council holds responsibility for. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, what we've done is we've put in that figure of 100,000, but we do have the caveat that if there's anything that presents a significant risk to the council's objective, so we've got a kind of catch-all at the end. That 100,000 is just a guiding principle, as it were. But if there was something that it was felt actually it's below that, but it does need to be in front of this committee, then we can do that.
Thanks for the clarification there, and thanks for the question. Anybody else? You're on again.
I move the recommendation at page 51. The committee is recommended to approve the suggested changes to terms of reference and provide a recommendation to full council for adoption.
Is that agreed? Agreed, thank you very much. We now move on to the item of the red opinion. I'm proposing that the committee decide to exclude the press and the public during the consideration of the following report.
Steve? That's not that far away.
Sorry, it's in September.
I'm happy to defer the item. I think it's a shame that someone from legal's not here to give us to be able to debate the advice, to be honest. So I'd like to propose we defer this till September's meeting. Thank you.
James?
Chair, if I may, the high-level details will be in the annual report, which you'll receive in September, part of the reason for this being in closed session is because it's the full report. So we don't put full reports in the public domain, whereas we do report on it in our update reports, but it's the summary, it's not the full details. That's partly why legal have kind of settled on actually this should be in closed.
Yes, Councillor MacDonald.
I suppose, look, I get the legal aspect, and of course, that's why that's why you're following the rules, and you got to be careful. You can't go off of that rule tonight. But I suppose my only question, sorry, James, I'm not opening you up to questioning, but I think if you're getting headlines at the next audit, then the back detail could still be brought up in the next thing anyway. So how are you protected in the detail anyway? I'm not either way. I'm happy to discuss closed because I think you have no choice tonight. But by deferring it, if you're going to get the report in at the next audit anyway, and it will have the headline elements of this, there's nothing to stop members. I don't know whether that's going to go into closed again, but there's nothing to stop members actually talking about some of the detail they hear tonight. I mean, so I suppose from a deferral point of view, you want to hear it all, don't you, together, but you have to follow legal. I wouldn't be able to vote with going against legal advice, but I wouldn't be against the deferral if they wanted a deferral.
Personally, I think that we should defer it so we can have a debate with legal here to find out why this is in closed session. Because I don't really understand why it is, because it's no detail of anything. It's just a report of the council's failing, and maybe the public should know.
Just picking up on Councillor Happel's point, and also reflecting a little bit on James's point, is we'll get the headline, but if the legal point is clarified and we can do it in open session, then it just adds the detail to what's going to be in James's report anyway. And it's going to be really clear, this is not a political point. This is about transparency and, you know, also the public understanding that we've identified this and we're going to learn something from it as well. And also it's a very vulnerable group.
Chair, just for me, I don't see it unusually. I don't see it as a political point. So don't worry. It's just legal, isn't it? We need that legal advice. I suppose the only I'm looking for you, Phil. The only thing you'd have to be prepared of for the next order, for the next agenda, is if legal still say no because you don't want to discuss that sort of information in public, you're going to have a deferred item and then the report. You're going to have a closed item, then the report. So just, I mean, you know, it's still fair, but just be prepared that I mean, I'm not on this committee, I don't know why, but just be prepared that you may have a closed item and the report that you're talking about.
I think yeah, okay, that's a good point, Councillor MacDonald. I think, but we can make representations to legal in the meantime, so that we don't arrive here at this point with no one from legal that we can debate the actual semantic point with them.
Would it be helpful if we asked legal to give us the basis on which the opinion is made in detail? Because it's not fair to ask Democratic Services to relay something without it being in writing. I mean, that will probably save us time in the longer term. So I'd be happy to go that way with it.
Yes, so it feels like the committee would benefit from some further discussion outside of the committee, some further information from legal, and then potentially to consider at the meeting on the basis of what they may or may not hear outside the meeting with that explanation. Yeah, that's fine. On that basis.
Yeah, thank you. I'm desperately trying to remember the conversation that was taking place on email, because there were various parties involved. But Bapinda, there was children's services in there, and I think I've got to be careful what I say, but it's about the risk to the service is why it didn't want it, right? But I kind of want to have the conversation offline with members to explain. Yeah.
Okay, Chair, if I propose, if we can have that...
well, let's do that.
If we have the additional discussion offline, if legal say no, then we'll be happy to accept the no and we'll just do it in private session. But as James says, it'll be a headline in his report, but we can do the detail at the next meeting after that report.
But you're going to you're calling for a deferral
Yeah,
tonight.
I think so. I think it's right that we call for a
Okay,
deferral.
I agree. I'm happy to second a deferral.
That's agreed. Thank you.
Chair, before we close, can I make a suggestion? With lots of snippets about LGR in this meeting, and actually some of the questions I didn't ask were about LGR. I just wonder if we're at the point where each of these committees are given a written information item on LGR as it affects the committee, rather than us asking lots of different questions. I think that might be useful.
As members know, there'll be a briefing next month, and it will also LGR will be considered by business support next month. And there will also, from September, any report which has LGR implications will set that out within the report in much the same way that financial and legal obligations are set out. So hopefully that should give you information as you go on.
I think you're right, and I think it's a good point. I think what's really key, though, Steve, is to make sure audit get that, because I know scrutiny's getting it, but it's really important that audit get that on items. You don't want to feel you're living and breathing it, but you don't want to be everywhere. But it's going to be key across. But audit can't forget it, because it's really an important aspect, isn't it? Anyway, thank you very much. That's the end of the meeting.
I can close the meeting. See you next meeting.